Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another session. Now we're going to move to a founder's passion and power of belief. Founders juggle many roles. They will do everything for the startup. They have their ideas questioned from time to time. By it could be customers, investors, their team. To discuss about how much their passion and the belief means, we have a wonderful panel of Siddharth Pai, who's the founding partner of 314 Capital, which is an early stage venture capital fund. And he's also an avid quizzer and has been ranked in the top 100 quizzes of the world by the Karnataka Quiz Association. We also have Rohit, who is the co-founder of Darwinbox and at one time was a state level tennis player. And joining them as the moderator is Anant Rao, who is the chairman of Focus Skill Pro, an edtech SaaS company, and also the MD of Focus Ventures, who was a hockey goalkeeper and also did pole vault. Anant, over to you.
Thank you, Ekta. Pleasure to be here with Siddharth and Rohit, two really wonderful people going separate, different journeys. One as an investor and one as an entrepreneur. And to join them, I'll wear my entrepreneur hat as well. So we'll be two entrepreneurs and an investor. So topic today is the power of belief, and obviously I don't have to emphasize this so much, but I will start by saying it's important that the founder has the belief in his company, right, and in his product and the problem that he's solving, right, for the customer. And it will show in the passion that the founder has for it. And as you can imagine, it's very tough to fake passion. So the passion runs there. It becomes kind of the guiding force for the founder and into the company. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what this really means, what it really how important it is for the founder to have it, and what else does it really, let me say, what else does it impact in the journey of the founder? So let me just briefly ask, Siddharth to kind of start first. He's had his own journey, and of course, first let's talk about, why do you think, this belief is important and in the founder and the passion that he shows? Why is it important?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Anand, for that introduction. I think, so first off, just starting off the entrepreneurs, one investor. I think that sort of, it speaks about the nation as well, where there are very few investors, large number of entrepreneurs, and that mismatch is something that's actually symptomatic of the entire Indian startup ecosystem as a whole. Hopefully with time, that actually does change. Speaking about passion as of now, so as an early stage investor, a number of the companies we usually see are either they're in the MVP stage. Some of them are MVP, some of them are pre-deck, some of them don't even have a domain name that's registered. They usually write from their Gmail or their Hotmail or their whichever ID that actually comes up, right? And so usually when that happens, the lack of any antecedents for that particular company makes it extremely hard for you to actually judge the value and for you to actually figure out whether these guys have the gumption or not to actually go through, right? And as you know, especially when it comes to investing and when it comes to valuations, it's always the historical antecedents that become extremely important in order for you to get a benchmark about what actually goes forward. So in the absence of all that, it's usually the intangibles that actually value a lot more than anything else. And passion is one of those driving forces that every single investor that you actually speaks to actually looks at. The reason why passion is something that all of us actually look for in the entrepreneurs, because when even after the investment is done and anything happens, ultimately it's the entrepreneur whose job it is to actually run the entire business as a whole. No investor invests into a company for the privilege of running it. There has been one notable exception to that, and all of us know it's a large US company, very large financial investor, one of the largest VCs in the world also put that. They took over the company, and I mean, the fate is there for everyone to see. No investor invests for the purpose of actually running that particular business. So that being said, where everything actually rests upon the shoulders of the entrepreneur alone, and when the chips are down, when the chips are down and everything's going to hell, is the founder's passion that's a last thing to actually break. And that large bulwark of the entire company as a whole, and that backstop that actually prevents everything from actually degrading. That is one of the first things that all investors always look at for that in that particular company. Because one thing that's very important to know is that passion actually can't be faked. It's very easy to actually test if a person is actually passionate about the business. He may not know everything there is to know about that particular business, That's completely fair because it is a learning journey for them as well. They may not have the best product or all the bells and whistles that's actually required. That's also fair because it's a work in progress. You'll always keep iterating upon that as well. And so all this is easy to filter out. But the passion that actually comes in, you'll always notice that the passion starts waning during the course of your conversation, be it a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour call, anything with the entrepreneur. The moment that starts waning, you realize that this is not something that the person actually wants. And that desire and that burning hunger actually always translates into a passion that comes up in their speech. And the moment you start attacking or start questioning their business model and their assumptions, is that passion that always bursts forth, and the guy will always scream, you know what, I actually know better than you and I'll go out and prove it. And that actually brings me to something I would like to actually cover during the rest of the topic, which with regard to, I would say, no, as well as how a no should actually be construed. Because this is an open secret in the entire world. An investor hears the word no far more often than he says the word no to any of the potential portfolio companies or pitches that actually come his way as well. And this is something that most entrepreneurs should also understand. So the passion is a two-way street. It's not just that the entrepreneur has to be passionate about what he does. You need to find a VC or an investor who's equally passionate about that particular space, what you're actually trying to solve for. And the last thing you want on your cap table is an investor whose only job is to actually give you money 3-4 years ago, and he's just sitting over there occupying space and not adding any value to the board or adding any value to the business after. So the passion filter works both ways. It works from the investor looking at the entrepreneur, and I would urge all the entrepreneurs on this call to also gauge your investors' potential or current on the basis of the passion that they actually bring to the table as well.
Great, interesting perspective, Siddharth. I'll take you up on that. Know where the investors here know often, because I'm sure not a lot of entrepreneurs understand that. But Rohit, over to you. They say every great company begins with a dreamer, right? And that carries forward. Darwinbox is doing very well, and congratulations to you and your team. Tell us that journey, and how did you believe in it? How did you get into it, and how it was important?
Yeah, thanks, Anand. And like for everybody's benefit of understanding, Sid and Pranav were one of our early investors, so that passion definitely in HR Tech rubbed off on us. So thanks for that, Sid. Just to call out publicly. So a little bit on the journey, Anand, and I think my background so that you understand this better. So Darwinbox, I started with Jayant and Chaitanya, two of my friends, and three of us were in client-facing roles. So I was at McKinsey, Jayant was at EY, he was a banker, and Chaitanya was at EY, and he was the HR consultant. And when three of us started Darwinbox, I think the only thing that was common to all of us was in different parts and different forms, all of us realized that there was something lacking in terms of automation, especially in the enterprise space, to improve the experience of employees, right? While there were transactional things that they were doing on certain systems, while they were trying to put together a few things, there were offline conversations, etc. There was a clear problem that all of us noticed in our own experiences while working with clients, right? And the problem was very, very evident. Now, I mean, problem is not enough to start a company, right? Like a company needs an idea, it needs people, it needs a lot of things. But one thing that three of us were convinced was that this is a problem which is worthwhile to solve, right? And there is definite benefit these enterprises will see when we solve this, right? And then we did our own fact-finding mission as three of us, right? And I think the belief, while there is passion, belief, and our passion was to solve the problem, the belief came from doing our research, right? It was not, I'll be an entrepreneur one day and that bravado and come in and say, hey, we'll build the best product in the world. It was more around, all three of us went back to all our clients that we served. And we said, what's the problem, right? And why is the problem? What else did you try? Did you try this enough? Did you go out into the world and check for a product? All of that. And interestingly for us, everywhere we heard very similar answers on either they're moderately happy or unhappy with their existing products that they were using. And there were a lot of things that resonated when we spoke about how a system should be easy to use. A system should be flexible to bring in a lot more things onto the platform. The analytics should drive insights rather than give graphs, right? So some of this that we spoke about, which we were passionate about as a solutions to the problem, resonated. And that's where the belief came in. Because I think one part of founding is the three founders having a certain belief or a set of founders having a certain belief, it needs to be externally validated as well. And that validation comes with when you're pitching it to future employees, when you're pitching it to customers, when you're pitching it to investors. And sometimes the validation comes when competitors tries to hire people from your org, right? You know that our intrinsic belief is externally being validated. And that's a very nice, positive, virtual cycle to be in. And that's where the belief compounds. Of course, there are businesses, and each sector is different, right? There are businesses which are very new to the world, early to the market, which need a lot more intrinsic belief, because you need to believe that the world is going to change in a certain way and I'm building something for it. But in a category like ours, which is enterprise technology, which is an established category, we needed to believe the fact that, hey, this is a problem worth solving. There are companies out there wanting to buy this, and we can do a very good job of it. And that's where Darwinbox started off. And today, I think across India, Southeast Asia, we have 400 plus clients, a million plus users on the platform. We're backed by investors like 314, Sequoia, Lightspeed, all coming in with the same problem that we are solving with, and the belief compounding.
Fantastic, Rohit. That's definitely a inspiration for a lot of entrepreneurs out there. I'll give you a little bit about my own story, and then we'll go with more questions. But basically, my previous company was a tech company, right? And we sold that to eventually Motorola, several years ago. And after that, came back to India. And after having been in the US 15 years, one of the things that was really striking out there is the blue collar, gray collar workforce skills, right? I mean, they just, it just felt like, if someone could be skilled even for 6 weeks, 10 weeks, that their wages could improve. In a lot of cases, they could get their job. And it just felt like there was such a big gap. And those skills were never taught in school and college, and work skills were not there. So really, it's something like, you help someone find their first job. And in the US, I was fortunate enough that we were employing a lot of people, and some of them we just hired because we believed that they would train themselves and get up to speed, even though they're not there when we hire them. So I think that those people, they'll still get up at midnight now if you call them, right? Because they remember that for the rest of their life. Now, I'm just thinking that if you take that to a blue collar, gray collar workforce guy and skill them to get jobs, you're actually satisfying a very big need that people have with respect to jobs and employability, right? And that's, I think, that was a cause that I was very close to, and I said, let's jump in. My background was primarily tech, but skilling was all new. And then said, okay, as we pursued the journey doing that physically, we said, how can we digital enable this to make that one, of course, not tech being a strength, but also to imagine that tech can do a lot of it to drive that skilling. And skilling is an ongoing requirement, and there is a big gap. And that's what I jumped in with. And I believe that every day we create more jobs or making people, upskill people for their jobs, then it gets better. And that's been the journey of, let's say, Skill Pro. And then now we are completely, digital learning. And fortunately, we had a chance to pivot into education, where again, you're taking tier 2, tier 3 schools, students, where the level of, let me say, using technology is about the same as gray collar, and making them also learn through digital means. And that was the goal. But yeah, through the journey, what fundamentally we have, what's fundamentally exciting me is when people are using it, feel like they've learned something, they go back and they're using it at the job or getting a job because of it. And that's been a very, very, wonderful feeling of being able to do that. Now we want to scale that, and that's our journey there. But let me go back to Sid for a second. And obviously there is passion, and then there is the commitment to that passion, right? And so when you're looking at entrepreneurs, first of all, how do you determine whether there's passion, and what other things that you would say make up a founder's commitment when you look at it? Would love to get your take on that.
Thanks for that. So I think the best way to actually summarize this is to actually borrow from riders on the storm by the doors. A product or a rather a founder without passion is like a dog without a bone or an actor out on a loan. Huh? It's essentially it's something that's actually fundamentally lacking. And the moment that thing actually lacks, then in that case there is no difference between the entrepreneur and I would say just a person going in for a regular 9-to-5 job. Because the passion actually what causes the entrepreneur to actually wake up early in the morning, hit the street, reach out to clients, reach out to investors, make sure the product actually starts getting built up, juggling all these multiple parts simultaneously. And what happens, and this is actually one of the reasons why the investment process is usually about a couple of months. Because the documents and all are primarily standard form, all this actually becomes a lot easier. But the ability for the entrepreneur to sort of sustain that heightened amount of diligence actually coming at him, it's one of the benchmarks or barometers to find out how passionate he is about that particular business versus not. Because see, the moment someone actually comes and starts attacking your core beliefs or attacking the premise upon which you actually built up the entire business and attacking it with substance, with facts, as well as with data. The moment you do a ad hominem attack and you're attacking just because you don't like the way he dresses or which colors it is, those are the kind of people you immediately detach away from, and it's a small ecosystem. The moment an investor does any act like this, the investor is already weeded out. So the ability of the entrepreneur to sustain that level of passion throughout the entire process and to actually withstand, I would say, the diligence actually becomes an excellent barometer to find out how differentiated he is compared to everyone else. And the reason, and that actually comes through not just from a deck that you actually create or not just from the metrics that you actually have in the business. As a company also grows, the metrics will obviously improve. Your bottom line, as your top line increases, your bottom line will start going into the black and all that. But the greatest test, and one of the questions we always ask our entrepreneurs, especially second-time entrepreneurs, what are the difficulties you actually faced in your previous stint, and how did you actually manage to maneuver or navigate through those particular difficulties? Because see, regardless of the journey you're going through, either as an investor, as an entrepreneur, anywhere, or in any other journey. The difficulties that you actually face, everyone has a choice at that particular time. You can either buckle down, you can actually put your nose to a grindstone and continue as is and find a way to pivot, find a way to survive, or you can just throw in the towel and say, you know what, to hell with this, it's not worth my time. I'm just gonna leave it over there and basically just bounce out after. Is that passion is what actually differentiates the person who doesn't mind actually going at it up to the hilt and seeing what the end outcome is, and even the end outcome, I would say a loss, or they can't actually, the company actually fails or something. That failure is one part of the entire journey. That failure doesn't actually define you. And it's the people who are passionate about what they actually do that say, you know what, I failed in this particular endeavor, that's completely fine. Let me actually find something else. If you look at the journey of Vijay Shekhar Sharma as well. They've been at Paytm for the past 19 odd years. And Paytm only started becoming big 10 years ago. He started all the way from value-added services when people used to charge for SMSs. It was that way back. That's how we started Paytm. And look at what Paytm's actually become now. It's become one of the largest unicorns in the entire country. Vijay Shekhar Sharma is a very well-respected entrepreneur. And they've had some extremely dark times that they've actually gone through. Is the passion of the founder that actually bleeds into the entire team and defines the culture of the entire enterprise. And one of the other barometers to find out how passionate the entrepreneurs who actually speak to not just to the founding team, but out of the KMPs, but to the other people within the organization as well. Because as you said, the passion becomes easy to fake in certain, to quote Abraham Lincoln, you can fool some of the people all the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time, right? So while they may be able to feint a small amount of this with a few calls with investors, with some of their key people, the moment the rest of the organization doesn't actually attest to the passion that the man actually drives in the organization, it clearly shows. Because the lack of passion on the top bleeds down to the rest of the organization, and no one actually wants to take the extra mile. They take it for granted that this is what's going to happen. It's just something that goes as part and parcel of the entire thing. And those become the filters that actually move it out. And see, the greatest test of passion doesn't actually happen at the point of investment. It happens at the point when there's some force majeure event or something that happened where the company actually starts sinking. And in India, I think all of us can admit over the past 3-4 years, there have been numerous sort of flashpoints in various sectors, right? We've seen it happen from demonetization. When GST started coming through, there were some businesses that were adversely affected. And then with the Yes Bank fiasco that actually happened, then I would say with COVID and everything that's happened, there have been multiple tests to every single entrepreneur that's actually gone through. And all of us are aware of several companies where a large number of companies initially folded up just because of the fact that even the entrepreneur basically ran out of gas and said, you know what, I'm really not interested in this. They don't mind folding it out. Whereas we've actually seen companies where even though they've had zero cash in the entire bank, they've actually mortgaged whatever they could. They've actually pumped money into the business to keep it as is. They've convinced all their employees to actually take zero salaries and take a higher component of ESOPs. They've managed to actually weather that entire storm. It's those hardships, that passion is the driving motivation to actually navigate you through any of the hardships that you actually face. And so that's one of the reasons why investors always look at the point of passion during the initial stages also, because investing is sort of like, I mean, this is once again another song. Investing is actually like Hotel California. It's easy to get in. It's actually impossible to actually get out of that, right? Once you invest in the company, you're actually on the same boat as the founder, as everyone on that team. And there's only one captain on the entire boat, who's actually the entrepreneur. And there have been times where even the investors have actually found their own passion in that company actually failing. It's the entrepreneurs actually perked them up and said, you know what, I actually believe in it. Remember why you actually invest me way back then. Look at how these metrics have actually improved. Look at what we've actually done. Look at the quality of the product we built. And that actually galvanizes the rest of the team to go forward. And simultaneously, you also need investors who are also passionate about the business, because all of us are human. Even when the entrepreneur's passion starts failing for whatever reason, it's left up to the board, it's left up to the other people in the company and the investors to actually perk up that particular person, get the captain up to speed so they can actually go back to the helm and actually lead the company out of the morass that they actually are in.
Fantastic. Sid, Rohit, over to you, just to understand, I mean, you're obviously making that journey that Siddharth's talking about, helping entrepreneurs do, right? I'm sure there's been a lot of situations where, you've gone that extra mile, being a founder of the company and not so much the CEO, so to speak, right? And can you talk about one or two of those situations, anything that comes to mind on, how your journey has been, let me say, smoothened because of the passion that that you have, or your co-founders have?
No, I think SaaS is today hot, but I think we've had an atypical journey even today in terms of SaaS, because when we started in 2015, SaaS was not this hot. The second part was India or Asia SaaS was not even understood, right? So we started in a time where a lot of investors said, hey, the Freshdesk Zoho model works better. Why don't we do US? Right? Investors have said this, employees have said this, friends have said this, Freshworks founder has said this, right? So many people have said this that, this is tough. But we had a problem at hand, right? Like, we could see the problem because we experienced the problem that our clients were facing. Now we had a choice of saying, okay, do we go by a business model or a problem that we've seen and we've solved, right? And that itself was a journey in itself, right? While we had a certain level of connects in the investor ecosystem right upfront, even before we started, we said, let's build this out and see if this works, right? Because you're actually if you bring on an investor, you're actually bringing on more commitment to yourself and to the ecosystem, saying, okay, I am putting an investor money at stake. I'm trying to do this. Are we really in this, or is there a market for this, right? How much of belief we have, we need to know whether we'll be able to execute, and is there a market for this, right? So the first 8 months, we put in our own money, our own saved money from our salaries that we earned into the building of the product, right? And once it came out and we took it to the market and we got the response that we wanted, is when we said, okay, now we know that there is an MVP that seems to be working, and now we'll need more money into the cap table, and that's where we'll go. Similarly, in multiple times, one of our global competitors gave out an offer of doubling salary to all our sales folks at one point, right? And this, we were in a situation where we were not like extremely funded, right? We didn't take much funds because we thought we are in a better gross margin business than most other companies, all of that, right? So, and what do you do then, right? And the only thing we could do was talk to them, right? We were not going to match that salaries. And this was a 10-member team. We lost only one to the competitor, right? It was just over communicating. It was being extremely transparent about where we are, what we believe, and we believe strongly about what we are solving and what we can do. And the offer itself was a validation, right? We said, if you got an offer from a company without even looking at you and your details, that's because you're definitely doing something good, right? And multiple other, right? I mean, I'm sure everybody who's listening in, or everybody, I mean, Anand, you would have gone through this, you would have gone through this as well,
Sure,
right? Like everybody has heard no's, everybody has struggled. So I think definitely over communicating helped us a lot. In whatever form, right? Whether it is to the investors, whether it is to the customers, whether it is to the employees, just being transparent and being over communicating always helps. And it seemed to always work for us. So I think that's one thing that has been a huge learning for me in my journey.
So actually, Anand, that what Rohit actually brought up is a very good point. Passion is something that's actually immutable. You can't actually buy passion. No matter how many ESOPs you dangle in front of someone, no matter how much cash you actually give them, their ability to actually go above and beyond their remit is actually it's a function of the passion that you actually have. And you've seen so many people, especially in larger organizations, that they have 100, where they have 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 people. It's actually very hard to maintain that level of passion, and that passion always feeds into the high level of attrition that these organizations have. The moment you don't have satisfaction with the job that you're doing, the moment you don't actually believe in what you're doing, it's actually very hard for a human being to actually continue doing the same thing. This is when you start getting distracted, you start actually slacking off on your job, you start looking at other alternatives, and that's where you actually start going. And it's always a job of the entrepreneur, the founder, and the leader to actually galvanize everyone to actually make sure they walk down the straight and narrow path. And this is why startups have a tremendous advantage compared to, I would say, the larger, more established businesses, because the people they actually get on board over there are not coming on the basis of a job. I mean, the starting salaries especially just as you start off as a startup, Rohit can actually attest about this. There was no large amount of money. Everyone actually takes a massive haircut to actually join that particular startup, because number one, they are actually passionate. They are actually passionate about the business they're actually building, right? And that business can be whatever. It can be HRMS. I've actually met people who are extremely passionate about actually creating kombucha or creating one specific product, because they believe, look, this is a product we really like, we believe in, and their passion actually exudes out. So even though you may not actually invest in that particular business for a variety of reasons, most investors actually take it upon themselves to help these guys get funded by introducing them to some of their friends or putting money in the personal capacity to actually get that through. And passion, as Rohit mentioned, always compounds, right? The moment you go there with a lackluster pitch, the moment you're distracted, you're looking around, you're hemming and hawing, you can't actually answer. Nobody actually wants to have that conversation. But someone comes, they're passionate, they're jumpy, they keep throwing facts at you. There's a strong narrative behind it. You can actually make out like, you know what, I don't mind actually taking a bet on the guy, because investing, at the end of the day, the greatest risk of investing is not financial, economic, macro, interest rate, forex risk, or anything like that. It's actually people risk. You're actually backing, what is a company after all? It's a combination of all the people that actually make that entire thing work, right? The moment that actually fails away, there's nothing else. I mean, if an entrepreneur one day says, you know what, I'm actually bouncing out of the business and take back all my shares, take over the director's seat, I don't care. What can an investor possibly do? He can't. No investor can actually run that particular business. If they could run that business, they wouldn't be an investor. They would actually be running a business like that already. So that's why that entrepreneur's ability and that to galvanize a team and to actually run that is actually what makes it important. And that's actually the crucial element. And it's one of those intangibles. And that intangible, by the way, doesn't actually, even as your company grows, not something only in the early stage. Even when you go to your Series D, Series E, Series F, or whichever letter of the alphabet you actually want to choose, at that point in time, everyone already knows what your metrics already are. All that is standard information that your team can actually give. But in the principal to principal conversation that you have with either that investor or whoever that particular person is, with that board member, your ability to actually convince that person his decision is also going to be driven by the person he's actually dealing with, right? Because the business comes, the business goes, the metrics goes up, the metrics go down, all that will fundamentally change. But the person that you're dealing with is going to be the same person you'll be dealing with today, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, and he'll be the person to deliver that ultimate exit. Simultaneously, from the entrepreneur's point, they look at the investor and say, look, when the next round's investor comes and asks for a reference check, I mean, the metrics are what they are, they'll always speak. They'll always talk to the person and say, what is this guy about? Is this guy legit? How does he actually conduct himself? Does he really believe in what he's actually selling? Because the ability to actually get that sale, even for whichever client you're pitching to, or if you're deciding between funds, it always depends on the person you're actually talking to, because that person actually epitomizes the entire business as a whole. And unless he exudes the same level of passion that the entrepreneur actually has, and those intangibles actually come out, you're just going to say, you know what, no, it doesn't actually matter, and go. That's why most VCs insist for a face-to-face call, a face-to-face meeting. Now everything's moved online. I mean, it's a rough translation at best. but the sort of facial tics that the person has, the way he actually looks, the way he conducts himself, maintaining eye contact, how he gesticulates, and I gesticulate quite a lot, unfortunately. The way he actually moves and those gestures, all that actually feeds into how interested that person actually is. Because the moment that interest wanes, no matter what carrot you dangle in front of him, it's not going to work. And then everything, the entire ship actually gets sunk because of that.
Great, great. So we have, I think, about 6-7 more minutes. I'll try and cover 2-3 more topics very quickly, so we'll make it short answers now. Sid, let me say, passion quotient, any passion score? How do you evaluate? Is there any metrics for that? It's an audience
Follow
question.
through. I think one word: follow through. If you give him feedback and he acts on that feedback, he come back and said, "Look, you told me you wanted to see this, this, and this. All this work. Now, do you guys want to invest or not?" That actually shows that the guy believes in his business and he really wants to get you on board. And that actually, I would say, softens the wall and actually makes him more conducive to that particular investment as well.
Perfect. Rohit, you have co-founders, right? And not all founders can be exactly on the same page with respect to the amount of passion. Or how do you bridge that? I mean, how does passion across founders help, or how does it let me say aggregate?
No, I think aggregate is a better word, Anand. I think around, if you go through the cycles, I think there will be a point where one of us is down, one of us is up, etc. What helps is the aggregate that pulls everybody up. I think that's why I'm a big believer in having a co-founder. I mean, if anybody asks me, I generally tell them I think at least one co-founder is definitely helpful, because it's very human, right? Like, you can't have your whole journey and you're looking at 10-year journeys, 7-year journeys, 20-year journeys. You can't be through that journey with the same level of energy. Passion might be there, but same level of energy to communicate that passion or stretch that passion cannot be there. So I think the aggregate is something that definitely helps. And of course, right, differences of opinion also comes in because of that, and that's healthy, right? As long as you can go out and have a beer after that, I think that's more healthy than not having a difference of opinion and everybody saying one thing, right? Like, somebody has to tell you or call you out on if you're just going overboard.
Good. So it's a combination of the founders, and the guy up there and spirited is probably pulling the others up. That's good to know, and one of the reasons to have it, right? So you have let me say, additional buffer in those tough times, so to speak. Great. Now, just coming to later stage companies, Sid, you've probably seen some of this. What role does passion play when let's say the company is now suddenly a 500 people company, and and the founder is not necessarily interacting with them, or in some cases when it's been acquired and the culture is there? How do you do you see some of that in your journey?
No, of course. I think so. Regardless of whether you're at the beginning of your journey or whether towards the very end, that passion is actually what keeps you going. If you look at the largest enterprise in the world right now, even Steve Jobs, he was passionate about design up to the very end. Even on his deathbed, he would still be shooting off emails and chewing people's ear off, saying that this is not done as per the standard. Why is this not happening? And that is actually what builds the entire company. So regardless of what, passion is stage agnostic. It doesn't matter if you're just starting off, if you're just at the point of an exit or anything. That passion is what actually differentiates you compared to all your competitors, and that's what actually gives you the premium from investors as well as the entire market as a whole.
Okay, so we've got 3 minutes. We'll do a little bit of a rapid fire, which means your answer can be longer than one sentence, and if possible, one word. Let's go with you're obviously running a good company there, Rohit. The most passionate employee outside of your co-founders. You want to name one?
Our CTO.
Putting you on the spot here. Yeah, sorry.
Our CTO.
CTO. Okay, good. Siddharth, one passionate founder you've seen, whether you invested in him or not, but the most passionate founder you've seen.
Rohit.
Fantastic.
We scratch each other's back on screen.
Good. There is an audience question about I think passion quotient and passion scoring, and I think Siddharth has answered that. One more thing I would say is about the founder's commitment, right? One is passion, of course, but the fact that they have to they put in money, they put in they take a cut in salary, they invest families' money. All that is a very important part, and that follows passion. I think that's something that a few alluded to, but I thought it was important, and probably Sid looks at that if founders have done that before it comes
the
to
opportunity cost. See, the opportunity, the amount you sink into the business and the opportunity cost you forego is actually a testament to the passion that you actually bring to the table, right? Because a number of these founders can actually get really well-paying jobs outside, but they've taken that haircut to actually come here and to actually build something greater, and that greatness is what something that that actually inspires the investors as well.
Right. As a founder, right, a lot of times we are saying, if you can actually do the same thing for free, then you are probably passionate about it. I mean, somewhere, do you agree with that, Rohit, Siddharth? Quick.
I don't. That's a short answer. I think there's value to what you do, and you should claim that value. I strongly believe that you should not do anything for free if there is something that you're doing valuable.
There's a strong difference between entrepreneurship and charity, Anand. So if anyone asks you to actually do it for free, then you can actually ask them to give you all the money without taking any securities. So flip the question back on them. If they say yes, then you can have a conversation around that.
Got it. I know the clock's ticking here, so we have one more. Any last thoughts before I summarize? Siddharth, Rohit, anything you'd like to add?
Sure, I can go first. I think so. To everyone on this call, see, passion actually transcends the no's. It transcends all the hardships and everything that you have. If someone says no is the most often word you'll ever hear as an entrepreneur, Rohit can also attest to that from clients, potential hirees, investors, whoever you have to go throughout. Don't let that no actually motivate you. And that always remember that no is transient. It's temporary. It's as of that particular period. Find out, rather than taking the no as an air of finality, your passion should actually lead you to ask questions about why they said no, figure out if that can actually improve your business, improve upon that, and then iterate, go back to the same cycle. Even though it's insanity doing the same thing over and over again, but for entrepreneurship, it's not the same thing. You always iterate, you experiment, it's something different, and passion ultimately becomes a fuel that actually drives that, and that what actually creates value for everyone around.
So never take no as a final answer is what Sid's saying.
Yeah, and I think my last take would be, I think a lot of us as founders have not done some of what we're doing now ever before. I think the only reason we're surviving or doing well is because of that passion bit, which we're able to hire the people who've done this before. We are able to sell things we've not, or do things we've not done before. And I think that's the little bit of fuel that you need. So when you start off, or when you're looking at what problems to solve, just make sure you're super excited about it, right? And that will automatically do all the rest of it, right? Because as both Sid and Anand said, you can't fake passion for sure.
Sure. Hey, thank you both, Rohit, Siddharth. I think the lessons for the entrepreneurs here, or our experiences, has been that it's important to be passionate about it. If you're not passionate about it, don't get going. Wait till you find the right thing, and only when it really drives you, then get on the entrepreneurship bandwagon. But thank you very much, Rohit, Siddharth, for the time, and I give it back to Ekta here.
Thanks, Anand.
Thank you so much, Anand and Rohit and Siddharth. Fantastic session. There are just so many keywords. Only Anand summarized some. Captain of the boat. It's so important to figure out who the captain of the boat is. Even what Rohit you mentioned about the fact that what you believe in fact could change. When you're an early stage to a growth stage, and passion trickling down the organization. Thank you so much once again, and thank you for joining us at TGS 2020.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.